Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Thanks. I had never been the kind of person who took risks, at least not when it came to traveling alone. Most of my life I stayed close to home, only venturing out when I absolutely needed to. But in the spring of 2019, I found myself sitting behind the wheel of my old silver Toyota Camry, pointed west on the interstate, with nothing but an overstuffed duffel bag, a half-broken phone charger, and a vague plan to drive all the way from Oklahoma to Northern California. The reason was simple. My best friend from college, Evan Mitchell, had finally convinced me to come out and visit him. He had moved to a small town just outside Sacramento about a year earlier for work. We hadn't seen each other since graduation, and in our late-night calls, he would always bring up how badly he wanted me to see California. The mountains, the coast, the whole lifestyle he swore was different than anything back home. I had just finished a job contract at a local IT firm and had about 3 weeks before my next gig started. That small window of freedom pushed me into saying yes. I told Evan I'd drive out and stay a few days with him. It was cheaper than flying, and besides, there was a part of me that wanted to know what it felt like to hit the road by myself, just me, my car, and the open highway. Still, I was nervous. When I told my mom about the plan, she frowned in that way only mothers can. "Alex," she said, "you've never driven more than 4 hours by yourself. California is... what? Almost 2 days of driving? Alone?" I shrugged. "It's not like I'm backpacking across Europe. I'll stop at hotels. I'll call you when I can. I just want to try it." She sighed. "Just promise me you'll be careful. Don't pull over on some deserted road in the middle of nowhere, and for God's sake, make sure your phone stays charged." That last line stuck with me more than I realized. The first day of the trip went better than I expected. I left before sunrise, the highway still quiet except for a few semis humming along in the gray light. I had a playlist queued up, classic rock, some country, and a handful of podcasts Evan had recommended. The miles blurred by as I passed through small towns with faded diners and rusted grain silos. Every couple of hours I'd stop, sometimes for gas, sometimes for food. At a truck stop in Amarillo, I grabbed a burger and texted Evan. "Me. Halfway through Texas. You better have a beer waiting when I finally get there." Evan. "Man, California craft beer is a whole different game. Drive safe. Don't get murdered by a trucker." I laughed at that. At the time, it felt like harmless dark humor. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, I had been driving nearly 15 hours straight. My back ached, and my eyes stung from staring at the endless road. I had booked a hotel online that morning, a small chain place in New Mexico about 30 minutes off the main highway. My phone was my lifeline for directions. It told me I had another 40 minutes to go before I could collapse into a real bed. The clock on my dashboard read 10:15 p.m. when I noticed the battery icon blinking red on my phone. I sighed, reaching for my car charger. The thing had been giving me issues for months. It was one of those old ones where you had to twist it just right in the socket for it to catch. I plugged it in, wiggled it around, waited for the charging symbol. Nothing. I cursed under my breath and tried again. Still nothing. "Come on," I muttered, giving the cord a shake. "Not tonight." At 10:30 p.m., the phone died completely. I wasn't panicked right away. I figured I'd keep following the GPS directions I remembered. Take the next exit, drive a couple of miles down, and I'd see the hotel. Easy. Except after passing a few signs and glancing at the empty black road ahead, doubt started creeping in. I couldn't remember if I was supposed to take exit 192 or exit 194. Both were coming up. I picked one at random, exit 194. The ramp curved into darkness, leading me onto a 2-lane road with no other cars in sight. On either side, the land stretched into emptiness, scrub brush and scattered trees under a starless sky. I drove for a few miles expecting to see the glow of a gas station or maybe the neon sign of the hotel. Instead, there was nothing, just silence and the hum of my engine. "This doesn't look right," I said aloud, my voice echoing faintly inside the car. At the side of the road, I pulled over. I dug out the charger again, jamming it into the socket, twisting and cursing, hoping for a flicker of life on my phone screen. Nothing. For a few minutes, I sat there in the dark, engine idling, thinking about whether I should backtrack or keep going. That was when I noticed the headlights. A pair of bright beams appeared in my rearview mirror, slowly pulling onto the shoulder a few car lengths behind me. My first thought was relief. Maybe it was a cop. Maybe they could point me back to the highway. But there were no flashing lights, no markings on the vehicle. Just two yellow headlights cutting through the night. I squinted, trying to make out the shape. It wasn't a semi. Looked more like a sedan, maybe an older model. For a minute or two, nothing happened. The car just sat there, engine running, lights on. I drummed my fingers against the steering wheel. Okay, maybe they're just making a call. Or maybe they're lost too. But unease spread through me. I put the Camry in drive and eased back onto the road. My heart jumped when the other car did the exact same thing, pulling forward just seconds after me. "Nope," I whispered. I pressed the gas a little harder. The road stretched ahead. No signs, no towns, just an empty black ribbon. Every turn I made, the car behind me made too. After the third turn, I couldn't deny it anymore. They were following me. I tried to stay calm, telling myself maybe they were heading the same way. Maybe it was just coincidence. But when I turned onto a smaller side road, one I hoped might loop back to the highway, their headlights swung right behind me again. That was it. My chest tightened. "Why are you following me?" I muttered, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The road narrowed, the trees on either side pressing closer. My only light came from the twin beams of our headlights. At the first wide patch of road I saw, I made a split-second decision. Turn around. I slowed, edging to the right, preparing for a U-turn. The car behind me slowed too. I twisted the wheel, heart pounding, managing to swing my Camry around. But when I faced the opposite direction, I froze. The other car had reversed and stopped across the middle of the road, blocking it completely. The driver's side door opened. A man stepped out. Even at a distance, I could see his frame. Tall, broad shoulders, dressed in dark clothes. He started jogging toward me, his face shadowed, but something in his stride screamed aggression. "Shit," I yelled. Instinct took over. I slammed the gas, yanking the wheel to the right. My Camry lurched off the asphalt, bumping into the grass and dirt, the suspension groaning as I pushed it past the block. Somehow the tires caught and I shot forward, bouncing back onto the road just ahead of the man's car. In the rear view, I saw him sprinting back to his vehicle. I didn't wait. I floored it, adrenaline coursing through me as the engine roared. For the next 10 minutes, I weaved through random turns, barely keeping track of where I was going. My only thought was to put as much distance between myself and that man as possible. Finally, I spotted a side road and swung into it, cutting the headlights and pulling over into the shadow of some trees. My chest heaved as I killed the engine, plunging myself into darkness. The silence was suffocating. I sat there, gripping the wheel, praying not to see those headlights again. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Nothing. When I was finally sure he hadn't found me, I started the engine again. Carefully, I traced my way back to the main road, then toward the highway. Road signs appeared, blessed green markers pointing me back toward civilization. By the time I pulled into a gas station off the interstate, my hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped my wallet. Inside, under the fluorescent lights, I bought a new charger and plugged my phone in. When it powered on, I saw a flood of missed texts from my mom and Evan. I typed back quickly, my fingers shaking. "Me. I'll explain later. Just don't ask me to do another solo road trip anytime soon." That night, lying in the stiff bed of the hotel room, I couldn't stop replaying it. The way the car shadowed my every move, The way the man had jogged toward my door without hesitation. The way he had set up his car to block the entire road. He hadn't been looking to help me. That much was clear. I'll never know exactly what he wanted, and maybe that's for the best. But every time I think about it, a cold shiver runs down my spine. All I know is if I hadn't reacted in that split second, if my car had gotten stuck in the grass, if I had hesitated even a moment longer, I might not be here to tell the story at all. I never really thought much about road trips when I was younger. My family wasn't the type to load up the car and drive cross-country. We usually just stayed close to home, maybe visited my aunt in Pennsylvania once or twice, but nothing serious. So when I finally got my driver's license junior year of high school, I made myself a promise. I was going to do a real road trip before graduation. I didn't want it to be just about the destination either. I wanted that cliché. The long highway drives, the gas station snacks, late-night conversations, music blaring out of half-broken speakers. I wanted it all. By the time senior year rolled around, I had the perfect excuse. Our teacher, Mr. Connors, had this elective called Legends and Mysteries. It wasn't the official name of the class, but that's what we all called it. It was basically about unsolved mysteries, folklore, creepy urban legends. The kind of class you'd think was just filler, but honestly, it was the one class I actually looked forward to every week. I sat in the back row with my best friend Daniel. I'll call him Dan for this story. He and I had been friends since middle school. Same sense of humor, same taste in horror movies, both the kind of kids who'd sneak into abandoned houses just for the thrill. When Mr. Connors announced he was organizing an optional field trip to a supposedly abandoned town about 2 hours away, Dan and I immediately signed up. But here's the thing. The school wanted to take a bus, and for some reason I didn't want that. Maybe it was because I wanted the independence of doing it myself, or maybe I just wanted to feel like this was part of my own promise to take a real road trip. So I volunteered to drive my car and convinced Dan to ride with me instead of going on the bus with the rest of the class. He agreed instantly. That morning I pulled up in my 2007 silver Toyota Camry, a car that rattled when it hit 70 miles per hour but had a good heater and a trunk full of old hoodies. Dan hopped in with his backpack slung over one shoulder. "Bro, this is gonna be sick," he said, tossing his bag into the back seat. "You think Connors is actually gonna let us do anything fun, though?" I asked, pulling out of his driveway. Dan grinned. "If not, we make our own fun." Like always, the first hour of the drive was normal. Just music, dumb jokes, and Dan pointing out every weird license plate we passed. But as we got closer to the place, the landscape started to change. The trees grew thicker, the roads narrower. My GPS showed a long gray line cutting through what looked like endless forest. It was mid-afternoon, but the sky had that washed-out gray tone that made it feel like dusk. When we finally saw the sign, it was half fallen over, wood-rotted, letters barely legible. "Welcome to Dry Creek. Population ... The numbers had been scratched off completely. Dan leaned forward, squinting at it. "That's not creepy at all." I laughed, but it was the nervous kind. Population 0, I guess. We kept driving until the road opened up into a wide clearing. That's when I saw them. Buildings, maybe a dozen or so, all crumbling brick and boarded windows. It was like stepping back 100 years. The bus was already there, parked near what looked like an old general store. Our classmates were filing out, stretching, pulling their hoodies tighter against the wind. Mr. Connors was standing near the front, clipboard in hand. "Park over there," Dan pointed to a patch of cracked pavement. "Away from the bus." "Don't want to look like we're clinging to the group," I smirked. "You just don't want to walk back with everybody when it's dark." He didn't argue. We climbed out of the car, the air colder than I expected. It smelled like wet earth and old wood. Everyone gathered as Mr. Connors gave his little speech about how the assignment was to use our investigative skills to figure out why the town had been abandoned. He mentioned the town had been built in the early 1900s, but left deserted within a decade. Nobody knew why. Fires? Sickness? Something worse? He didn't say, and that's what made it interesting. After a quick head count, he led everyone toward the church at the center of the village. That's when Dan nudged me. Tallest building. Over there, he whispered, pointing to a 3-story structure on the far end. Its roof sagged, one corner half collapsed, but it still towered over everything else. "You're already planning to sneak off?" I asked. He grinned. "Of course." We didn't drive 2 hours just to listen to Connors read off Wikipedia. We waited until the group was halfway across the square before peeling off, heading toward the tall building. The grass reached our shins, dry and brittle against our jeans. Up close, the building looked worse. Its main door had been sealed shut with heavy boards, but at the back, someone had dug a hole leading down to the basement. Dan peered inside. "Yo!" Ladder. Sure enough, a rusted ladder bolted to the wall disappeared into the dark pit below. "You first," I said. Dan rolled his eyes. "Fine. But if I die, you're telling my mom I went out like a hero." "Hero of bad decisions," I muttered. Still, I followed him down. My phone's flashlight lit up a dusty concrete basement. Empty beer bottles scattered the ground. Graffiti marked one wall, but it was old, faded. Wooden planks leaned against the far side like someone had tried to barricade something once. We wandered deeper. A stairway led up into darkness. Dan looked at me. "We've already come this far." Every step creaked beneath us as if the wood might snap. The second floor was worse. Narrow hallways, little rooms branching off. With no light from outside, it was like walking into a cave. I whispered, "This is a bad idea." Dan chuckled nervously. "Bad ideas make the best stories." That's when we heard it. A loud clunk, like a rock hitting the floor. It came from one of the side rooms. We froze. My chest felt tight. I could hear Dan's breathing, shallow and quick. "Raccoon?" I whispered. "Too heavy," he whispered back. Against all better judgment, we tiptoed closer. Dan lifted his phone, the beam of light cutting through the black. What we saw made my blood run cold. 3 figures, men, standing perfectly still about 10 feet inside the room, facing us. Not moving, not speaking, just staring. Their posture was unnatural, too straight, like they'd been placed there. Dan's hand gripped my sleeve. Neither of us spoke. For a moment, none of us moved. Then instinct took over. "Go!" I hissed. We bolted down the stairs across the basement, scrambling up the ladder 2 steps at a time. We didn't stop until we were outside, gasping for breath, hearts pounding. We caught up with the group near the church. A classmate, Emily, raised an eyebrow. "Where'd you two go?" "You look like you saw a ghost," Dan answered before I could. "We went into one of the buildings." "Bad idea." "What happened?" she pressed. Dan glanced at me, then back at her. His voice was low. "We weren't alone in there." We didn't explain. Not to her, not to Mr. Connors. We didn't want detention, didn't want to sound crazy. But as we followed the group back to the bus, I couldn't help glancing at the tall building one last time. On the top floor, where one window hadn't been boarded up, I swear I saw a face watching us. Pale, unmoving. Dan muttered under his breath, "They weren't people." I shook my head. "Homeless guys, maybe. Or squatters," he didn't answer. The ride home was silent. Neither of us wanted to talk about it. To this day, though, I can still see them, the 3 figures in the dark room waiting like they knew we were coming. And I can't shake the feeling that if we'd stepped 1 foot closer, they wouldn't have just stood there. I've thought about going back just once to prove Dan wrong. But then I remember that face in the window. And every time I picture it, my hands start to shake on the wheel. So maybe some road trips aren't worth finishing. I was 21 the winter this happened, a junior in college, worn down by finals and desperate to see my family after months of being away. My school was in Oregon while my parents lived back in Missouri. Flying was out of the question. I didn't have the money for it, not with rent and groceries bleeding me dry. So I did what I always did. I packed up my beat-up 2008 Honda Civic, loaded a duffel bag, a few blankets, and a thermos of coffee, and told myself I'd make the drive in 3 days. I actually looked forward to it. Road trips felt like a kind of therapy when I was alone. Just the hum of the tires, music filling the cabin, the feeling that I was moving towards something familiar. But there was also this undercurrent of unease in being on the road at night, in places where I knew absolutely no one. Still, I brushed that off. The first day went smoothly enough. I drove from Eugene to just past Salt Lake City. The interstate stretched flat and endless, and by the time the sun dipped below the horizon, I'd already been driving for nearly 12 hours. My neck was stiff, my eyes were dry, and my knuckles ached from gripping the wheel. I knew I needed to rest, but motels weren't in my budget. That was fine. I'd already decided I'd just sleep in my car when it came down to it. It was close to 1 a.m. when I saw one of those small rest areas pop up. A faded green sign with the symbol for bathrooms and vending machines. It wasn't one of the big truck stop plazas, just a pull-off with a tiny cinder block building, a row of 4 parking spaces, and a couple of buzzing lights that cast everything in a weak yellow glow. There was only one other vehicle there, a silver pickup parked at the farthest end. I pulled into the opposite corner, killed the engine, and sat for a second in silence. My whole body buzzed with exhaustion. All right, I muttered to myself. Bathroom, then sleep. I grabbed my phone and flashlight, stepped out, and stretched until my back cracked. The cold air burned my lungs after hours sealed inside the car. The little restroom building smelled like bleach mixed with piss, but it was better than nothing. I finished up quickly, splashed some water on my face, and stepped back outside. That's when I saw him. A man stood right next to my Civic, leaning down to peer into the window. Can I help you?" My voice came out louder than I meant. The guy jerked upright, startled. He was maybe mid-30s, stocky build, a beanie pulled low over his forehead. His laugh was quick and awkward. "Oh, sorry, man. Didn't mean to scare you. I was just checking if someone was in the car. Wanted to ask if you had a couple bucks. Vending machine won't take my card." My stomach tightened. My car didn't have tinted windows. From even 10 feet away, he could have seen whether it was empty. There was no reason for him to be pressed up against the glass. "Yeah, no cash. Sorry," I said quickly, brushing past him to the driver's side. He didn't move. He hovered a moment, then asked, "Long drive tonight?" I slid into the seat, forcing a polite smile. "Yeah, real long. I need to crash, though. Good luck with the machine." He raised a hand in this half-hearted wave, then slowly walked back toward the silver pickup. He climbed in, but I noticed he didn't start the engine. I tried not to think about it. I shoved my backpack into the back, reclined the seat, and let out a shaky breath. Sleep didn't come easily. My nerves buzzed, and I kept replaying how close he was to my car. 5 minutes passed before I noticed the glow of headlights shifting in my mirrors. I sat up to see the silver pickup pulling forward, then stopping directly behind my Civic just a few feet from my bumper. "Seriously?" I whispered. For a minute, I just sat there, debating if I was being paranoid. Maybe he just wanted to park under the light, but my gut screamed otherwise. I started the engine, my heart pounding as I shifted into drive. The guy didn't move. He just sat there as I pulled back onto the interstate. "Not worth it," I muttered, knuckles tight on the wheel. Not worth it. The next 40 minutes were hell. My body screamed for rest, eyelids drooping even as adrenaline coursed through me. Finally, another rest stop appeared, this one even smaller. Except the building looked completely abandoned. Graffiti sprayed across the concrete, windows boarded up, the roof sagging. But at 2 in the morning, I didn't care. I was bone-tired. I parked beneath a flickering lamppost, locked the doors, and threw a blanket over myself. The silence felt deeper here. No other cars, no buzzing machines, just the occasional groan of the wind. I passed out in minutes. When I woke up, it wasn't gradual. It was violent. A deafening crash slammed through the car, jolting me upright. My ears rang. Another smash followed, the shatter of glass. "What the?" I whipped my head around. Headlights blinded me from behind, and on my right, standing just feet away, was the man from the last stop. He held a metal bat. He swung again, smashing through my rear passenger window. Shards rained across the seat. "What the fuck?" I screamed, fumbling for the keys. My hands shook uncontrollably. He leaned toward the broken glass, his face lit by the harsh white beams behind him. That same crooked smile spread across his face. "Liar," he said. "What?" I cried, twisting the ignition. "Liar," he repeated, slamming the bat against the door. The metal screeched. "You lied to me!" I had no idea what he meant. My heart jackhammered in my chest as the Civic roared to life. I slammed the car into drive just as he raised the bat again. The tires squealed, gravel spitting as I shot forward out of the lot. In the rearview mirror, his headlights swung wildly as he ran back to his pickup. "Fuck, fuck, fuck," I muttered over and over, gripping the wheel so hard my hands went numb. I dialed 911, nearly dropping the phone from how bad I was shaking. There's a man. He attacked my car at the rest stop off Highway 80. He's following me. He had a bat. He broke my windows." The dispatcher's calm voice grounded me enough to breathe. She told me to keep driving toward the next lit exit, that patrol units were being dispatched. 10 minutes later, I pulled into a brightly lit gas station. An officer was already waiting, blue lights flashing. My whole body sagged when I saw him. I explained everything, how the man had been peering into my car, how he'd moved his truck behind mine, and finally, how he smashed my windows and called me a liar. Another officer arrived soon after, taking down the description of the pickup and the man. They confirmed they found the shattered glass back at the abandoned rest stop, but no sign of him. When I finally looked over my Civic under the gas station lights, the damage hit me. Both rear windows were destroyed. Long dents scarred the doors. And worse, I hadn't realized in my panic, my back tire was slashed, nearly flat. I ended up stranded in that little town for 3 days while repairs were made. My parents drove 6 hours just to help cover the cost. Even now, years later, I can still see that man's face when I close my eyes. His twisted grin, the way he said liar like it meant something only he understood. What sticks with me most is how random it was. I told him I didn't have cash. I told him I needed sleep. That was it. That's all it took for him to snap into something unhinged, violent. I could have died over a few dollars. Every time I drive long distances now, I refuse to stop at those tiny rest areas. I'll push myself to find a motel or at least a bigger travel plaza with people around. Because that night proved something I can't unlearn. Out there on those dark highways, it doesn't take much for a stranger to become a nightmare. I never liked long drives, but I didn't exactly have a choice that winter. Back in 2014, I was 20 years old, attending a small community college not far from my parents' house in northern Ohio. Money was tight. I didn't bother renting an apartment near campus because my parents' place was only a 30-minute commute. Every holiday season, my parents had a tradition. We'd drive 2 hours across state lines to spend Christmas weekend with my mom's side of the family in a little town in Pennsylvania. Normally, I'd just pile into the car with them, but that year the timing didn't work. They left early Friday morning. I still had class until the afternoon, plus a shift at the hardware store where I worked part-time. So the plan was for me to drive down alone that night. By the time I finally clocked out, scarfed down a quick sandwich at home, and packed a duffel bag, it was already past 8. My dad gave me the usual drive safe, keep your eyes open lecture while I zipped up my coat. My mom hugged me twice, the second time whispering, "Text me when you get there." "Relax," I told her with a smile. "It's 2 hours. I'll be fine." I wasn't. The drive started off normally enough. The highway was nearly empty, which didn't surprise me. People traveling for the holidays had mostly left earlier in the day. It was just me, the low hum of my old Chevy's engine, and the faint glow of the dashboard lights. I liked that part, actually. The radio was playing some local station, the kind that mixed classic rock with holiday songs. It gave me this weird, cozy feeling, like being between two worlds. One foot in the present, one in all the Christmas drives I remembered as a kid, dozing in the back seat while my parents talked up front. But nostalgia doesn't get you very far when your car starts acting up. About an hour into the trip, I noticed the engine making this faint rattling sound, like coins clinking in a tin can. My first instinct was to ignore it. This car was a hand-me-down from my uncle, and it always had some noise or another. I pressed harder on the gas. That's when I felt the resistance. "What the hell?" I muttered, pressing the pedal all the way down. The car barely responded. A cold rush of realization hit me. I wasn't out of power, I was out of gas. The fuel gauge had been broken for months. I'd meant to fill up after class, but between work, rushing home, and packing, it completely slipped my mind. My heart dropped into my stomach. The highway around me was deserted. No gas stations, no towns, just stretches of woods and frozen fields. I coasted to the shoulder as my car sputtered and died, the headlights dimming against the dark. Great. Just great. I sat there a moment, breath fogging up the windshield, weighing my options. My phone had a signal, but calling my parents wasn't really an option. They were already at my aunt's house, and it would take them hours to get back. AA would take forever. But I did know there was a little town about 20 minutes up the road. We'd stopped there once before on one of these holiday drives. I remembered a 24-hour gas station on the main strip, so I grabbed my coat, locked the car, and started walking. The cold bit at my face instantly. My sneakers crunched on the frozen shoulder as semis blasted by every now and then, the gusts of wind nearly knocking me sideways. After what felt like forever, the faint glow of fluorescent lights appeared ahead, like a beacon in the dark. Relief surged through me. Inside the gas station, the warmth and stale smell of coffee hit me. A tired cashier in a Santa hat barely glanced at me as I bought a plastic fuel container and filled it outside. As I screwed the cap on, I thought to myself, this could have been way worse. At least I'm not stuck all night. I wish that had been true. The walk back felt longer. I was hyper-aware of the shadows along the tree line, the eerie emptiness of the road. I kept glancing over my shoulder, though I couldn't have said why. By the time I spotted my car, my hands were numb and I was eager to just get moving again. I poured the gas in, screwed the tank shut, and slid into the driver's seat. When I turned the key, the engine coughed and came back to life. The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. I actually laughed out loud. That's when my headlights flicked on and illuminated him. A man, maybe 50 feet away, standing directly in front of my car. I froze, every muscle in my body locking up. He wasn't there before. I would have seen him on my walk. He had no car, no flashlight, nothing. Just a figure standing in the dark. He started walking toward me, slow but deliberate. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. My first instinct was to hit the gas, but before I could, he stepped up and leaned against the hood of my car, peering at me through the glass. I cracked the window an inch. "Can I help you?" My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Hey, sorry to bother you." His voice was low, almost casual. "My car broke down just up the road. Any chance you could give me a lift?" I blinked. "Up the road?" I repeated. "I just walked from that way. Didn't see a car." For a moment, his expression was blank. Then he smiled faintly. Must have missed it. It's pulled off a ways. Something about his tone made my skin crawl. He wasn't asking, he was testing me. "Look, man, I really can't," I said. "I'm already late. Family's waiting on me." He didn't move, just stared, hands braced on my hood. After a long silence, he tilted his head. "All right, then maybe you got a bottle of water or something? Been walking a long time?" My pulse hammered in my ears. I did keep water bottles in the glove box, but opening it meant leaning across the seat, turning my eyes away. I forced a smile. "Yeah, sure. 1 second." As soon as he stepped closer to the window, I slammed my foot on the gas. The car lurched forward. He jerked back, stumbling, and that's when I heard it, the horrifying screech of metal against metal, like something sharp dragging across the side of my car. I didn't stop. I didn't even look. I just drove. The adrenaline carried me the rest of the way. My hands trembled on the wheel, my foot pressed hard on the gas. In the rearview mirror, for one awful moment, I thought I saw him running after me, arms pumping unnaturally fast. But maybe it was my imagination. When I finally pulled into my aunt's driveway, my parents were already outside waiting. My mom's face fell when she saw me. "Sweetheart, what happened to your car?" I stepped out and turned. The entire passenger side was gouged with deep, jagged scratches, as if someone had taken a knife or a key and dragged it along the length of the metal. My dad's eyes narrowed. "You hit something?" "No," I said quietly. My throat was dry. "Someone did this." I told them everything. The walk, the man, the fake story about the broken-down car. My mom was pale by the end of it, hugging her sweater tighter. My dad muttered something about calling the police, and we did, but nothing ever came of it. The report went nowhere. For weeks afterward, I couldn't shake the thought. That man must have followed me all the way from the gas station. 20 minutes in the freezing dark, just waiting for me to return. I still drive that old Chevy sometimes. The scratches are long gone, fixed with a new paint job. But even now, every December night, I find myself glancing at the side mirror whenever I stop for gas, half expecting to see him walking up the road. I've always loved driving, though I can't say the same about the places it sometimes takes me. Back in 2018, I had a job that kept me on the road more than I was ever home. My name is Daniel Keller, and at the time I was 29, working as a regional tech consultant for small companies spread across the Midwest. It wasn't glamorous. Lots of Wi-Fi troubleshooting, network wiring, helping small offices set up their servers. But it kept the bills paid, and I liked the freedom of being in charge of my own schedule. But the traveling? That was brutal. Sometimes I would put in 12, even 14 hours behind the wheel, hopping between towns and counties, sometimes 2 or 3 states in a single week. I had grown used to the monotony of interstate highways, the way one rest stop blends into the next. I knew which exits had a decent diner, which ones had vending machines that still worked, which stretches of road you could go 2 hours without seeing a gas station. That summer, I had just wrapped up a job outside of Rockford, Illinois, and I was heading back to my apartment in Bloomington, Indiana. It was late, nearly midnight, when I pulled back onto I-39, and I had a solid 5 hours left ahead of me. Normally, I'd power through, but I'd been up since 6 that morning, and I could already feel my eyelids threatening to shut. I told myself, "Daniel, don't push it. You've done this before. Stop, stretch, get some caffeine." I always carried a cooler in the back seat, but I had already gone through the last of my energy drinks. So when I saw a green sign a few miles up the highway that read "Rest Area," 2 miles, it felt like salvation. I actually muttered aloud, "Perfect. Just what I need." The exit curved sharply off the highway and almost immediately dumped me into a small parking lot. Unlike most rest stops I'd used before, this one had no winding access road, no trucks idling in the background. It sat almost flush against the interstate. The headlights from passing cars streaked faint beams through the thin cluster of trees that separated the building from the highway. The building itself was squat and plain, probably built in the 70s. A single flickering street lamp cast a pale cone of light over the cracked pavement. The whole place had a tired, forgotten feel. I rolled my neck, cracked my knuckles, and parked right in front of the entrance. My car was the only vehicle in the lot. Stepping out, the air hit me, cooler than I expected, with a faint, earthy smell from the nearby woods. It woke me up a little, but not enough to skip the caffeine I was craving. I stretched my arms, then muttered, "All right, let's get this over with." The lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant and old carpet. A vending machine hummed quietly against one wall, its neon display half burnt out. A rack of outdated maps stood in the corner next to a bulletin board with faded flyers about seatbelt safety and tourism in counties that no one cared to visit anymore. Straight ahead was the restroom, and to the right was something that caught me off guard. An abandoned pizza place, the kind of counter-service restaurant you used to see in small-town travel centers. The faded red letters above the shuttered counter still read, "Pizza Galaxy," The dining area sat dark and empty, with overturned chairs stacked in one corner. Dust coated the glass display where pizza slices used to sit. Something about it made my skin crawl. Places that were once lively, now silent and forgotten. It always felt wrong, like walking through a photograph of the past. I shook it off and went straight to the restroom. I splashed some water on my face at the sink, trying to shake the road fatigue. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above me. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. They echoed across the lobby, slow, deliberate. At first I thought, good, someone else is here. I'm not alone in this creepy stop. But then something about the rhythm bothered me. They stopped, then started again, like whoever it was had paused right outside the restroom door. I called out, "Hey, someone else here?" Silence. The footsteps faded. I dried my hands quickly and stepped back out into the lobby. Empty. My car was still the only one in the parking lot, visible through the window. My stomach tightened. I walked to the vending machine, keeping my ears open. The hum of the old unit filled the silence. I put in some bills and pressed for a bottle of Mountain Dew. The clunk of the bottle dropping echoed way too loud. I cracked it open and took a swig, but my eyes kept drifting toward the abandoned pizza counter. The shadows seemed darker there. For a split second, I thought I saw something shift behind the counter, a quick darting motion like someone ducking out of sight. I froze. "Hello?" My voice was shaky. "Nothing." I backed away slowly, heading toward the exit. My instincts screamed at me, "Leave. Now." I was nearly at the door when I heard it again. Footsteps behind me, closer this time, faster. I spun around, and that's when I saw him. He stepped into the faint light, tall and thin, with long, stringy hair hanging around his gaunt face. His clothes looked ragged, like he'd been living rough for a long time. His eyes locked on me, wide and unblinking, and he started walking quickly toward me. "Hey!" I shouted, trying to sound firm. "Back off!" He didn't answer. He just kept coming, his movements jerky, almost too eager. My car was only a few steps away outside, but I knew I wouldn't reach it before he did. Adrenaline surged through me. Without another thought, I bolted. I tore across the parking lot, my boots slapping the pavement. Behind me, I heard him break into a run, too. His footsteps were uneven but fast. "Leave me alone!" I shouted over my shoulder. No response, just the sound of him chasing. I reached the far end of the parking lot and swerved toward the woods, crashing through the tall grass. Branches whipped at my arms as I pushed deeper into the darkness. Finally, the sound of his footsteps stopped. Panting, I crouched behind a thick tree trunk, clutching my phone. My hands trembled as I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? "There's a man. He chased me. I'm at a rest stop off I-39 near mile marker 104. Please, you need to send someone. He's at my car right now." The operator's calm voice tried to steady me. "Stay hidden. Officers are on the way." "Can you describe the man?" I whispered. "Tall, skinny, long hair, looks homeless. He came out of the abandoned restaurant inside." "Stay where you are. Don't approach him. No danger of that." After what felt like forever, probably 10 minutes, I saw the distant flash of red and blue lights through the trees. Relief washed over me, but I stayed hidden until I was sure it was safe. An officer stepped out of his cruiser, shining a flashlight around. He walked behind the rest stop building, and for a second I thought I saw another shadow dart away into the woods. When he came back around, he spotted me emerging cautiously from the trees. "You the one who called?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, my voice hoarse. "He was right by my car." The officer glanced toward it, then back at the building. When I pulled up, I thought I saw somebody run back there. Checked it out. Nothing. He's probably in the woods by now. "Who the hell hangs out in an abandoned restaurant at midnight?" I asked, my voice shaking. The officer sighed. "You'd be surprised what kind of people drift through these stops. Drugs, mental illness, people hiding from things. Best thing you did was run." Another unit pulled up and the two officers conferred quietly before one went back to search the rear of the building again. Finally, the first officer told me, "We'll keep looking. For now, you can head out. Stick to lit populated areas if you need to stop again tonight." I nodded, but my legs felt like jelly as I walked back to my car. The driver's side door was smeared with dirt like someone had grabbed it with muddy hands. I climbed in, locked the doors immediately, and drove away. The rest of that drive was a blur. Every shadow on the highway shoulder looked like him. Every car that merged behind me felt like it was following. When I finally pulled into my apartment complex at 4 a.m., I sat in my car for a long time, just breathing, staring at the faint smudge on my door handle. To this day, I don't know what that man wanted. Maybe he was looking to rob me. Maybe he lived in that abandoned pizza joint and thought I was trespassing. Or maybe it was something darker. All I know is if I hadn't trusted my instincts that night, I might not have driven away at all. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who drove halfway across the country by myself. But in the spring of 2018, that's exactly what I did. At the time, I was 26 years old and working at a printing company in Illinois. It wasn't the kind of job that made you feel proud to wake up in the morning. It was the kind where you got through the week by counting down to Friday, only to realize the weekend slipped by too fast. My days blurred together. Long shifts, dull nights in my apartment, microwave dinners eaten in front of a glowing TV. I'd been through a messy breakup the previous winter, and in the months that followed, my social circle had shrunk more than I realized. A lot of my friends were married, busy, or had moved away. One of them, Alex Jensen, had left about a year earlier for Texas. Alex and I went way back, high school buddies who stayed close through college. We'd been the kind of friends who could spend hours doing nothing, just driving around, grabbing food, laughing about stupid inside jokes. When he moved to Texas for a job in construction management, he called me often. "Man, you've got to come out here," he'd tell me. "It's different. Hotter than hell sometimes, but you'd love it. I'll take you out, show you some real barbecue, we'll hit the lakes. Just get in the car and come down." For the longest time, I always had excuses: work, money, the hassle of traveling. But that spring, after months of monotony, I snapped one night sitting in my dim apartment, scrolling through my phone. Alex had texted me earlier that day. "Alex, still waiting on you to show, man. What's it gonna take?" Me. "One of these days." Alex, "Stop saying that. Just get in the damn car." I remember staring at that text longer than I should have. For the first time, I thought, why not? 2 weeks later, I requested a block of vacation days, packed up my Camry, and decided I'd drive straight down to Texas. I could have flown, sure, but I wanted the road trip. Something about being out on the open road felt like it might shake me loose from the rut I'd been in. I planned to make the drive in 2 days. It wasn't impossible. Long, but doable. I left before dawn the first morning, thermos of coffee in the cup holder, playlists loaded, the horizon slowly glowing with sunrise. The first stretch felt incredible. There was a sense of freedom, even hope, as the highway stretched endless in front of me. Through Missouri into Oklahoma, then down through the flat stretches that seemed to go on forever. I stopped here and there, small diners, nameless gas stations, grabbing burgers or bags of chips just to keep myself moving. Every mile felt like progress, like maybe I was driving towards something better than what I'd left behind. By the time the sun was setting, I'd been on the road for nearly 15 hours. My eyes burned from staring at the asphalt. My legs ached from sitting so long. The world outside was turning from pale orange to dark indigo, the highway thinning of cars until it felt like I was the only one still moving. My plan was simple. Get to the small hotel I'd booked online in advance, outside a town called Willow Creek, Texas. Alex had recommended I stop there instead of trying to push all the way to his place in one go. It was about 30 minutes off the main interstate, but it had good reviews and was supposed to be quiet. At around 10:30 p.m., I checked my phone's GPS. It told me I had about 30 minutes left. That was manageable. I could already picture myself throwing my bag down in the room, maybe taking a shower and collapsing into bed. Then, just as I was watching the little blue dot on the map, my phone screen went black. At first, I thought maybe I'd brushed the power button. I tapped the screen. Nothing. Held down the button. Nothing. Dead. Shit. Not now, I muttered, reaching for the car charger. The problem was, the charger I had was old and finicky. One of those knockoff ones you buy from a gas station for $5. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I plugged it in, jiggled it, tried to find the right angle. Nothing. I shook the cord like that would fix it. The phone stayed black. I stared out at the signs on the side of the road, hoping I'd spot the exit for Willow Creek. The problem was, I didn't remember the number. I figured I'd recognize it, so I kept going. The next exit came up. No mention of Willow Creek, just a highway number. Still, I thought, maybe this is it. I turned off. At first, it seemed fine. An old gas station appeared on the right, its neon buzzing. Beyond that, though, the road grew quiet. No traffic, no houses, just trees pressing in on both sides. I drove for maybe 3 miles before my gut told me I'd gone the wrong way. I slowed down, pulled to the shoulder, and tried again with the charger. Nothing. I sat there in the silence, my engine idling, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than I needed to. That's when I saw headlights appear in my rearview mirror. At first, I felt relief. Another car out here meant I wasn't completely alone. But then the car slowed and pulled over behind me. Not next to me, behind me, several car lengths back. The headlights stayed on. I waited. 1 minute, 2. Nobody got out. Nobody passed me, just waiting. A prickle crawled up the back of my neck. "All right," I whispered, shifting into drive. I eased back onto the road. Almost instantly, the car behind me did the same. My stomach dropped. I drove another mile. The car stayed behind me. I took the first turn I saw onto a narrower road, hoping it was a shortcut or at least a way to lose him. The car followed. Another turn, another shadow in my mirror. By now, adrenaline was coursing through me, washing away my exhaustion. I muttered aloud, voice shaking, "He's following me. He's actually following me." The road grew darker, no streetlights, just the glow of my headlights stretching forward and the steady glow of his in my rear view. I knew I couldn't just keep driving deeper into nowhere. I needed to turn back toward the highway. So I slowed down, pretending to pull over. The car behind me slowed too. I swung the wheel hard, making a U-turn, gravel crunching under my tires. That's when I saw it. His car was angled across the road now, blocking almost the entire width. The headlights dimmed. The engine shut off. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, mid-30s maybe, baseball cap, dark jacket. His face was hidden in shadow, but his body language screamed aggression. He started jogging straight toward my driver's side door. I didn't think. I just slammed the gas, swerved off the road into the grass, weeds whipping against the bumper. For a second, I thought I'd get stuck. But the tires caught and I shot forward, just barely squeezing past his car. In my rear view, I saw him sprint back for his vehicle. "Go, go, go, go!" I shouted to myself, foot pressed down. The road twisted, the trees closed in. I took the first turn I saw, then another, headlights off now, plunging myself into darkness. My heart hammered so hard I thought I might pass out. Finally, I pulled over on a narrow lane, killed the engine, and sat there in silence. 10 minutes crawled by, then 15. No headlights, no sound of an engine. Eventually, I forced myself back toward the highway. By some miracle, I spotted a sign for Willow Creek. I followed it carefully this time, every shadow making me flinch. When I reached the gas station again, I pulled in, bought a brand new charger. My hands trembled as I handed the cashier the crumpled bills. The hotel was 5 minutes from there. When I finally parked in front of it, I sat in the car for a full minute before I could make myself get out. Inside my room, with the door locked and curtains drawn, I collapsed onto the bed. I didn't sleep much that night. Even now, years later, I think about that man. I think about the way he angled his car across the road, the way he ran at me without hesitation. And I know deep down, if my car had gotten stuck in that grass, or if I'd frozen for just a few seconds longer, I wouldn't be here to tell you this. I've always loved long drives, but I'd be lying if I said they didn't wear me down. I went to college almost 10 hours away from my hometown in South Carolina, and every break meant packing up my car and making that same grueling trip back and forth. My parents weren't thrilled about me going so far away, but I was stubborn, and when I got accepted into Eastwood University in Ohio, I didn't want to give up the chance. Over the years, I got used to the rhythm of the drive. Miles of highway, truck stops, podcasts, cheap food from gas stations, and the familiar sight of green exit signs. Sometimes I'd push myself and do the whole trip in one day, but other times I'd split it into two and stop at some random motel when my eyelids felt too heavy to keep open. That summer, I had just finished my sophomore year. I remember feeling relieved to be done with finals and excited to be home for a while. My car, an old silver Honda Accord, was crammed full with laundry bags, textbooks, and the kind of random dorm room junk you don't know what to do with. Extension cords, leftover snacks, even a cheap futon cushion shoved awkwardly in the back seat. Before leaving campus, my best friend Claire hugged me and said, "Drive safe, okay? Text me when you stop somewhere. Don't do your whole 'I can make it' routine." I laughed. "I'll be fine. 2 days this time. I promise." She squinted at me like she didn't believe me, but waved anyway as I pulled out of the parking lot. The first 6 hours went smoothly. I listened to music, stopped once for coffee, and called my mom around dinner time. "You should stop before it gets too late," she said over the phone. "Don't push yourself." "I won't. I'm pacing it this time," I assured her. But the reality was I'd lost track of time. By the time the sun dipped below the trees and the sky turned dark, I was still 4 hours from home. My eyes stung from staring at headlights, and the lines on the road had started to blur. I knew I had to stop. Around 11 p.m., I saw one of those big, brightly lit gas stations off the highway. The kind with dozens of pumps, an attached convenience store, and a row of parked semi-trucks resting for the night. I figured I'd fuel up, grab something to drink, and then find a nearby motel. The lot was buzzing with activity, truckers walking in and out, families stretching their legs, and a few tired-looking travelers clutching coffee cups. I pulled into a spot near the side, locked my doors, and went inside. The fluorescent lights made the place feel almost too bright compared to the dark highway outside. The cool air smelled like burnt coffee and cheap hot dogs. I headed straight for the restroom first, brushing past a small line of people at the register. When I came back out, I grabbed a cold Red Bull from the cooler and stood in line. That's when I felt a tap on my shoulder. "Long night?" a voice said. I turned. The man behind me looked like he was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. He had shaggy brown hair poking out from under a faded baseball cap, and he carried a six-pack of cheap beer in one hand. His face was rough, with deep lines around his eyes and mouth, like someone who'd spent too much time in the sun. Yeah, I said, polite but cautious. "Road trip?" he asked, almost grinning. "Yeah." Heading home from school, I shifted slightly, not really wanting to chat. "College girl, huh? Where you from?" "South Carolina." He whistled softly. "That's a haul. You out here alone?" That question put me instantly on guard. I kept my face neutral. "Just heading back." He nodded like he hadn't just asked something weird. "Need a ride?" I blinked at him. "No, I'm driving my own car." "Fair enough," he said casually. "Just figured." "Roads are long. Gets lonely, you know?" I gave a polite smile that wasn't real and turned back toward the cashier. My pulse was quick, though. Who offers a ride to someone standing in line with their own keys in hand? When it was my turn, I paid quickly, muttered a thanks, and walked out to my car. As I slid into the driver's seat, I noticed the man again. He came out of the store carrying his beer and a pack of cigarettes. He walked across the lot toward an old, rusty blue pickup truck that looked like it had been on the road for decades. The paint was peeling and one of the headlights was clouded over. He tossed his stuff inside, lit a cigarette, and sat behind the wheel. I told myself it was nothing, just a random guy. Before pulling out, I realized my gas tank was lower than I'd thought. I didn't want to worry about it in the morning, so I backed up to a pump and filled up. The blue truck stayed parked across the lot, engine off. I didn't look too hard in that direction. The motel was only a few minutes away, just off the same exit. It was one of those single-story motels with doors facing the parking lot, the kind where you can see every room from the road. The neon sign out front flickered with missing letters. Hotel Value. Inside the lobby, a tired-looking woman handed me a key card. Room 12, checkouts 11 a.m. The room itself smelled faintly like mildew and old cigarettes, but I was too tired to care. I tossed my bag on the bed, kicked off my shoes, and pulled the curtains shut. Then, for some reason, I peeked through the slit in the curtain before lying down. That's when I saw it. The same rusty blue pickup truck parked directly across from my room. The man was inside, sitting in the driver's seat, smoking. My stomach sank. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe he was staying here too. But if he had a room, why wasn't he inside it? I pulled the curtain shut, double-checked the lock on the door, and tried to sleep. Sometime after 1 a.m., I woke to a sound that froze me in place. The door handle jiggling. My eyes shot open. I held my breath. Someone outside was trying the door, slow, deliberate pushes like they were testing if it was locked. I sat up, heart pounding, and stared at the door. The noise stopped. Silence pressed against my ears. Cautiously, I crept to the peephole. Nobody was there. But then I heard it, the distant thunk of a car door shutting. I darted to the window, pulled back the curtain just an inch, and saw him. The man was back in the blue truck, sitting there like he hadn't just tried my door. Cold fear ran through me. If he had a room here, why wasn't he in it? I picked up the motel phone and dialed the front desk. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. I thought about calling my mom, but what could she do from 4 hours away? So I sat on the bed, clutching my phone, debating whether to call 911. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on the door. I flinched so hard my phone slipped from my hand. I stood there, frozen, as he knocked again, slower this time. Finally, I snatched up my phone and dialed 911. My voice shook as I whispered to the dispatcher what was happening. She told me to stay inside, stay quiet, and that an officer was on the way. When I looked again through the curtain, the man was gone from the door, but I could see him sitting back in his truck, watching. 5 minutes felt like an hour. I never blinked from that window. Then finally, headlights swept across the lot. A police cruiser pulled in. The moment it did, the blue truck's engine roared to life. The man peeled out of the lot. The cop instantly turned on his lights and sped after him. I collapsed on the bed, shaking. 10 minutes later, another officer came to my door. I let him in, still trembling. "We stopped the truck," he said gently. Driver was intoxicated. Beer, drugs in the vehicle. He admitted to knocking on your door, but denied trying the handle. I swallowed hard. It was him. "I know it was." The officer nodded. "You did the right thing calling us. You're safe now." The next morning, I left that motel at sunrise, my stomach knotted the whole way. I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting that blue truck to appear behind me. When I finally pulled into my parents' driveway 4 hours later, I nearly cried with relief. That night, as I lay in my own bed, I realized something chilling. If I hadn't locked the door, if I'd hesitated even for a moment, things might have ended very differently. And that thought has haunted every road trip I've taken since.